Velasco, and thank you for reading.
Manny Pacquiao, the gold, I don't think there'll be a problem for Manny.
Has its share of great fights. But every once in a while, human mind can also be controlled and muscle. Again, happy to have them say,
Only here, para sa bayan.
That's the opening bell for Round by Round presented by Eastern Communications. Mabuhay Pilipinas, welcome world. I'm Nisi Casiano. Ryan Songalia joins us later on in the show, but tonight, a good friend of mine will be sharing this platform with me to discuss the latest topics in the world of boxing today. To introduce him, of course, let's do it round by round style. Hailing from Marikina, Metro Manila, he has been a combat sports writer for over a decade. You may have seen his work on ABS-CBN, Sportskida, and International Business Times. Ladies and gentlemen, Santino Honasan. Tino, welcome to Round by Round.
Hello. Welcome. Ay, welcome. Salamat. Salamat ulit for having me.
Manny Pacquiao has been rated as one of the best pound-for-pound boxers in the world for a very long time. But when he announced his retirement from the sport last September, it also meant his removal from the pound-for-pound list. In an updated version of the pound-for-pound list released by the Ring magazine, Canelo Alvarez still lords the rankings, followed by Alexander Usyk and Naoya Inoue. So far, wala tayong Pilipinong boksingero na nasa listahan na iyon. But if you're going to look at it, most of the boxers in the rankings are champions. Now, we have 5 Filipino champions so far. Of course, Nonito Donaire, the WBC bantamweight champion, Rene Mark Cuarto, John Riel Casimiro, Vic Saludar, and Jerwin Ancajas. Santino, sa mga nabanggit kong pangalan, sino sa tingin mo ang pwedeng makapasok sa pound-for-pound list?
Para sa akin, going with siguro tenure as champion, you'd have to say si Jerwin. Jerwin Ancajas has been IBF Superfly, tama? Since 2016, 2015. So, in terms of long tenure as champion, siya may pinaka-claim kumbaga to be a pound for pound, to be a member of the pound for pound list. And also take into the fact na during his reign as champion, he's been we can say dominant. He's done well defending his title. He has had a couple of we can say lackluster performances during that time. Pero he's done his part. He's done his job of staying champion. I think what would merit inclusion to the pound-for-pound list is being able to challenge the other champions of his weight division. If you look at the pound-for-pound list nga, Nisi, sabi mo, these are champions, some multiple promotion champions, others undefeated, others yung mga talagang years na silang nandun sa top of the game. That yung ganong status sila has earned them right na makasama sa pound for pound ranking. Ang problema sa Filipino champions sa atin ngayon, siguro with the exception of Jerwin, not a lot of them have been champions for that long, no?
Nabalik tayo kay Jerwin Ancajas, Santino. Sa akin, surprising na hindi siya kasama sa list kasi tulad niya nasabi mo, Jerwin has been a champion since 2016. And to me, it's surprising to see Kazuto Ioka, who's the WBO Super Flyweight champion, at number 10 of the pound-for-pound list. Do you think na parang nasnub itong si Jerwin Ancajas?
It's possible. You can always say, they can argue na pass over siya, na look over siya. As much as we'd like to say na yung pound-for-pound rankings is purely based on accomplishments. So, meron pa ring halo na kumbaga parang popularity or ano. I think Jerwin, as good as he is as champion, has been a more quiet, so to speak, na champion. Yun nga, like I said kanina, he's done he's done well enough to be able to hold on to his title for long. And yun nga, he's had a few lackluster or not so impressive performances. Yung mga kumbaga parang getting by lang. I think those are factors kung bakit na-leave out si Jerwin sa pound for pound list.
Okay, now speaking of Nonito Donaire, Nonito climbed as high as number 3 in the pound for pound rankings in 2011. So he knows what it takes to get back on that prestigious list. But let me ask, in your opinion, do you think that win over Nordin Obali was not enough to put him back in the pound for pound rankings, considering that he had a good run in the World Boxing Super Series and won a title right after?
Si Nonito, albeit very impressive yung panalo kay Obali. That's a win coming off his loss against si Naoya Inoue. So para sa akin, I don't think it was as impressive as it was, no? I don't think it was enough to catapult him into pound for pound discussions ulit. Going back to Nonito, apart from Angkas, si Nonito also has a possibility of getting back into the pound for pound ranks solely based on his resume niya, no? 4-time, 5-time world champion, again a champion now at his division. I think one more big win, couple more big wins. If he can defend this title impressively, won't be out of the realm of possibility to see Nonito Donaire back in the pound for pound discussions.
Which fight do you think that has the better chance for him to make the list again? A unification fight against Raymart Gaballo or a unification fight against John Riel Casimiro?
For me, it would have to be against Casimiro. Casimiro right now is a bigger name. He has, I think, more credentials compared to Gaballo. Gaballo is, if I'm not mistaken, he's undefeated, no? But I think para sa akin, it would be fair to say na against Casimiro, there's a lot more at stake. And a win over si John Riel could eventually, if not push him to break into the pound for pound rank, it could help him inch closer, kumbaga.
Now moving on to John Riel Casimiro, do you think if he had beaten Guillermo Rigondo decisively, given that the fight was not a 100-meter dash, he could have landed a spot on that list?
Again, si John Riel has been impressive as a champion. John Riel can find himself in the pound for pound rankings with a couple more big wins. If he can defeat Nonito Donaire, who knows? No, he could find himself dun he could crack the top 10, top 15 ng pound for pound. Kasi as with Nonito Donaire against Casimiro is a big name. For Casimiro, Donaire is a massive name on his list. If he can take down a Filipino boxing legend, so to be fair, no, in Nonito Donaire.
With Yumir Marshall deciding to fully transition to the professional ranks after his stint at the Tokyo Olympics, many are wondering if his teammates on the national team will follow suit. And the best candidates for that are Carlo Paalam and Nesty Petesio. Santino, we can talk about how brilliant Carlo Paalam and Nesty Petesio are as boxers all day. But if they do decide to move to the pros, in your point of view, how do you think they will fare? And do you want to see them compete under professional rules?
Of course, syempre. I can't remember who told me, pero ang laking difference ng amateur boxing as compared to professional boxing. Wherein sa amateur boxing, you have such short time to work with na kailangan intense ka lagi. The more you can land, the better it is for you. Someone who has done that well was someone like Nesty Petesio. Pero I think nung past na nung itong huling Olympics, we saw also a side of Nesty Petesio that was a little bit patient. No, nakita natin na kaya rin niya maging fighter for longer, for possibly longer durations of fights, which leads me to she could do very well sa professional ranks. I think it would be a good transition for Nesty to finally enter the professional ranks. She's done. I think she's done, or she has nothing left to prove pagdating sa amateur ranks. Multiple time gold SEA Games gold medalist, Asian Games medalist, Olympic medalist na rin siya.
World champion.
World champion pa. So, I think the next logical step, especially at her age, is to finally step into the professional ranks. So, and she could very well be the face of Filipina boxing para sa akin.
How about Carlo Paalam?
Si Carlo Paalam din. Very, very promising na bata. 23 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Si Carlo also has the chops to make it big in the professional ranks. You can follow in the footsteps of a lot of great Filipinos who have become top tier flyweights, if I'm not mistaken.
Flyweights, tama.
So yun. So take that step, take that leap into the professional ranks.
Santino Boxing's place among the events at the 2024 Paris Olympics remains uncertain as the International Olympic Committee, or IOC, cites unresolved issues with the International Boxing Association, also known as IBA. As we all know, Santino, the IOC put up a task force to oversee and supervise the boxing competitions in Tokyo most recently. And with the issue between the IOC and IBA, it begs the question, what will happen to our Filipino boxers in the Olympics? Kasi Santino, to many, there is still an unfinished business because the Olympic gold in boxing remains elusive and we're that close to finally getting it. Does that make you fear that it would entice Nesty Petesio and Carlo Paalam to make the jump to the pros? Or are you confident that the IOC would eventually come up with a solution like last time?
It ultimately falls on the athletes themselves. For someone like Nesty, like I said, at 29 years old, ano ba talaga gusto nilang ma-accomplish na goal? For Nesty and Carlo, both of them have already become Olympic medalists. I wouldn't fault them for saying na okay na yun. Or I wouldn't fault them for saying na I've experienced stepping on a podium in the Olympics. I'd like to be able to race a world championship in the professional ranks. But at the same time then, these guys have been Olympic national team athletes for most of their lives. And I'm sure as much glory as they've brought the Philippines, para lang finally masabi nila na na-accomplish sila lahat ng gusto nilang magawa sa amateurs is makapag-uwi sila ng gold medal. And then that's also an option. And well, it's true na they'd be a little older. What weighs more para sa kanila? Is it that Olympic gold medal sa Paris, given nga if magkaroon ng Olympics, or if they can finally go pro? And yun nga, all the more reason na yun to think na they have more incentive to go pro if unclear ang situation pagdating ng Paris Olympics.
Now, Santino, most gold medalists in Olympics, had special treatment when they turned pro in boxing. Will you agree that the best career advice now for Carlo Paalam is to get the gold medal next in the next Olympics and then turn pro?
Yeah, that would be sound advice. Kasi like I said nga, si Carlo Paalam is just 23 years old. Being able to say na I'm an Olympic gold medalist, tapos saka siya mag-succeed sa pro ranks, ano yun, ang laking bagay yun. I think that's something that only he'd be able to say if it happens, di ba? Sabihin natin he can eventually become a gold medalist and then he can follow the footsteps of the guys like Donnie Nietes and become a world champion at the flyweight division. He'd arguably etch a place in the
Mount Rushmore of Philippine boxing ba?
Sorry, di ba? So you'd have like Manny Pacquiao, Nonito Donaire, Donnie Nietes, Carlo Paalam. Di ba? Ano yun eh? Enticing kumbaga. But it's a game of patience kumbaga. It's easy for example ako, nakapag-Olympics na ako. Okay, I'm so close to becoming a gold medalist. I'm sure andyan yung katenas. Andun eh, onti na lang eh. Siguro kung pinagigihan ko pa ng onti, malamang nakuha ko yun. Siyempre, may onting motivation and hindi lang onti. I'm sure ang laki ng motivation yan to get back into the ring or qualify again for the Olympics sa 2024 kung meron ng boxing doon.
For our next segment, we turn it over to Ryan Songalia.
The International Boxing Hall of Fame, located in Canastota, New York, is where the sport's greatest fighters and luminaries are immortalized for their achievements. Who decides who gets to be enshrined? Well, most of the voters are comprised of members of the Boxing Writers Association of America, which this writer is a member of. So today I will be sharing my votes for whom I believe deserves to step on stage at next year's Hall of Fame induction weekend. In the modern category, 3 are selected each year, but voters can pick up to 5. My votes this year include Roy Jones Jr., the former middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight title holder. It is his first year on the ballot and should be a no-brainer, as he was the most dominant champion of the 1990s. There is little doubt that Pensacola will be in the house next summer in upstate New York. Also among my selections are James Lights Out Tony, a former Roy Jones rival who was named Fighter of the Year for 1991 and 2003. Tony is returning to the ballot after not making the cut last year. My guess is that his steroid controversies soured him with some voters, but Tony was a throwback champion who fought just about everyone and deserves to make the cut. I also picked Miguel Cotto, whom some have said is my doppelganger. Cotto, who won titles from 140 to 160 pounds, was never the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world, but he was among the bravest and toughest of his time. Another selection I made from the island of Puerto Rico is Ivan Calderon, the underappreciated technician of the sport's lightest weights. Calderon was sublime in his skill and routinely beat opponents much bigger than himself, despite having virtually no punching power to speak of. And last on my list is Joel El Sapillo Casamayor, the former junior lightweight and lightweight champion from Cuba. Casamayor, who turned pro after winning Olympic gold in 1992, was overlooked in his time, but was as brilliant a boxing mind as anyone during his era, defeating Diego Corrales twice. I believe he also deserved the win over Acelino Freitas, who is also on the ballot this year, as well as Jose Luis Castillo, who earned a close controversial decision over Casamayor. As for the women's division, my picks include Alicia Ashley, the ballerina turned boxing champion who fought until she was in her 50s, traveling all over the world, including North Korea. My other pick is Anne-Sophie Matisse, who made her name with a brutal knockout of Holly Holm.
It's time for our Fearless Fighter of the Day, brought to you by Eastern Communications. And he's none other than Gervonta Tank Davis. He's a 26-year-old knockout artist from Baltimore, Maryland. He holds a perfect record of 25-0 with 24 victories by way of knockout. Davis is a 3-division world champion, and he currently holds the WBA regular lightweight title and the WBA regular junior welterweight championship. Davis is scheduled to be back in action on December 5th against Rolando Romero. And that's our Eastern Communications Fearless Fighter of the Day. Before we continue, we have several fights that have been confirmed. Arvin Magramo will take on Jerry Francisco for the vacant WBO Oriental light flyweight title on October 23. Also, on October 23, Jimuel Magramo will face JR Raquinel for the vacant OPBF flyweight title. Meanwhile, ito na, mangyayari na. Mark Anthony Heraldo will stake his Philippine Super Bantamweight Championship against Carl James Martin on November 28. So ayan po, Philippine boxing fans will have a lot of things to look forward to in the weeks to come. Before we say goodbye, we would like to thank Mr. Santino Honasan for joining us on the show tonight. Santino, maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat din for having me. Nakakamiss pala to, no? Nakakamiss mag-platform na ganito. Ayan, thank you for having me. Always grateful, always happy to be able to talk about combat sports and people fighting.
And that's the final bell for today's episode of Round by Round presented by Eastern Communications. I'm Nisi Casiano. We're on Facebook at 9 p.m. Monday to Friday and on our YouTube channel right after. Bill Velasco, Attorney Ed Tolentino, and yours truly will be working the fights for you on Monday. So catch us on the next Round by Round, all boxing, all Filipino, all the time. See you on Monday.